What is one commonality among Airbnb, Turo, and Uber? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that these three companies operate in industries that were historically very asset intensive, and they flipped the business model to make them asset light. So for example, think of Airbnb. They don't own any hotels as compared to a Marriott. They own lots of hotels. Fundamental change with definitely a component of technology, but I don't really feel like technology was the driving factor there. There are other industries out there that might or might not be right for this type of transformation. There might be some other industries that are going to go the other way. We're going to talk about both of those in this video today. So we know about Airbnb and Uber. These are, modern fixtures of today's life. Whether you use them or not, you're bound to have heard of them and whatnot. I think it's fun to think about what industries are out there that could, flip the traditional asset ownership model on its head to create a new category. One of the ones that comes to mind is an Airbnb for offices. I know we already have like WeWork and these temporary office spaces, but we really don't have the option to rent an office for a day or a week or a month that's very easy to get in and out of, that would have all the requirements that you need, and you're just good to go like that. Now, I know there are probably options out there, but in terms of having it all in one place on your phone in an app that you could go to any city in the US or the world or wherever and find the office that works for you, I certainly don't know if that option is out there. It could be, but I've not seen anything like that.
That is a great idea.
If you've seen something like that, comment below. I'd love to learn more about it. Now, regardless of what you think about the Airbnb for offices, I do think there is going to be continued evolution in the use of private planes. There's NetJets and there's all these other fractional ownership programs, but if or when will we get to the point where there is an app similar to Uber for private planes? I don't know that we'll ever get there, but think about how Uber transformed the taxi industry. I think, probably 5 years before Uber came about, if somebody told you that, yellow taxis would essentially go away and you just have people driving their own cars through an app, you might be like, oh, okay, what type of drug did you use before you just had this conversation with me?
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
The big difference is that a lot of people own cars, not as many people own airplanes. So that definitely, I could see some challenges there. However, I do think that there is an element within the folks that fly that want an option between flying private with their own plane or even a NetJets and flying commercial. Not quite there yet, so maybe I am not the best person to offer an opinion on this, but that's what my intuition tells me, right or wrong. Another category that I don't know is necessarily going to go the way of having an app or whatnot, but something that I found very interesting that happened during the pandemic was this concept of ghost kitchens.
Food delivery services boomed during the pandemic.
Virtual kitchens.
They're called ghost kitchens, and despite the name, there is nothing spooky about them.
Again, I don't know if I don't think we would get to the point where those types of kitchens would be available on a daily or hourly basis, or would be able to be so streamlined that we could just pull up the app on our phone and find a ghost kitchen that we could use. But still, it's really interesting because it's a way to repurpose assets that were traditionally or historically had been tied to one business to now diversify the uses of those assets. I think it's very interesting and a great idea for some of those restaurants that were willing to take that risk. I'm not part of the demographic that watches Mr. Beast, but maybe your kids or grandkids are of the age that the videos by Mr. Beast appeal to them. And here's a guy that not only has a wildly successful YouTube channel, he also created a restaurant that was based off the ghost kitchen concept. Mr. Beast Burgers was purely a virtual restaurant that used other kitchens to make the hamburgers. That's a great example of somebody using his notoriety and using the assets of another business in order to create a new business line.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought owning a restaurant would be easier. It's actually kind of hard.
I really love it whenever people challenge the current norms or current goals and whatnot. You look at the success of Airbnb and Turo, and I think there's so many people whether it's in the business press or wherever, that you really glorify that business model and just think, man, all businesses of the future are going to be like this, and only the sleepy old companies are not going to be. And just to be clear, I definitely don't believe that at all. We are always going to like manufacturing companies, and that's about as boring and as asset intensive as you can get. A great example here is the electric scooter business. I mean, who would have guessed that millions of people across the United States were ready to start riding scooters to get to different places? I mean, I certainly didn't think I would, but I've used them, and I mean, they're kind of fun, especially in bigger metropolitan areas. They're very handy to get around. But in addition to big metro areas, my wife is from a small town in Kansas, Great Bend, Kansas. You know, I think they, within the past year or so, finally got their first standalone Starbucks. Not saying that to, you know, put them down or anything. I think Great Bend's a great town, just to offer some perspective of how big it is and whatnot. Well, before they got their first Starbucks, they had a proliferation of electric scooters in a small rural town. You know, had these electric scooters that you could ride around. And my wife and I went back for a weekend, and we actually used one. We had to stay at a hotel. There was a Walmart close by. My wife just hopped on a scooter, went and got a few items from Walmart, and came back. So it's something that, you know, again, I didn't really think of as having a need for that, but it fills a need that I didn't know we had. But, you know, even more importantly though, is that this is a business that relies on purchasing assets, primarily the scooters. What's different here is that the company needs to purchase those assets because of the way that the asset is used. You know, if you think about a scooter, essentially you need an on-demand asset. You need that scooter at the front door of wherever you're leaving, and you need to be able to drop it off at the front door of wherever you're arriving. And that's how it has to be always if this is going to be, you know, a useful product for you. You know, if you always have to drop it off and pick it up at the same place, or you always have to worry about a charge or whatever, it's not going to be as effective. But because the company was able to purchase a very large number of scooters, put them out there for people to use, it's turned into something that can be a very effective mode of transportation. In addition to scooters, I think something that we're going to see more of is robotaxis. Now, robotaxis are different because there is a huge amount of technology that is required to have an autonomous self-driving taxi. But again, if you think about the change from the model of being asset heavy to asset light, you know, clearly we're seeing another shift to it being asset heavy again. You know, I don't think too many households are going to go out and buy a robotaxi to keep in their garage just so they can you know, pick up Uber fares and whatnot. Now, who knows? Maybe that's going to be the next evolution, but at the very least, I think that there's a strong likelihood, or even a near certainty, that due to the overwhelming cost associated of purchasing or deploying a fleet of robotaxis, definitely the next wave is going to be for a company to own those assets prior to it shifting to a model where the ownership of those assets is diversified among the population. Given the advent of change due to technology, there's bound to be implications for companies that are ripe for transformation, but also other types of businesses. I mean, again, we invest in manufacturing. I mean, we invest in a lot of different industries, but I always go back to manufacturing because I feel like for such a long time, manufacturing was viewed almost like a necessary evil of the economy and not something that is, you know, a really great company. I mean, we think there are a lot of great companies out there. We just happen to think that manufacturing is one of those. So as it relates to manufacturing, how do some of these trends impact it? Well, I mean, there's the obvious ideas of automation, robotics, et cetera, et cetera. However, you know, whenever we think about how to transform, it's sure with newer machinery and equipment and whatnot. It's also around how the customer perceives us. What I mean by that is, you know, I go back to the old Staples commercials where they introduced this concept of an easy button. I didn't necessarily love all those commercials, but I really like the concept because that's how I want to think of our companies being viewed by our customers. You know, if our customers have a problem, I want them to come to us first because they know that not only we can solve the problem, but if we can't solve the problem right away, we'll figure out how to so that it's no longer their problem. Now, that's not technology at all. I mean, I'm not trying to say that we're doing this because of technology. You know, again though, I just think about in a changing world, what can we do to ingratiate ourselves more to our customers to get them to rely on us more. And it's not really technology related. It's just, you know, trying to fill the needs of our customers and taking that approach. The other angle, which we talk about a lot with our portfolio companies, is being more sophisticated about sales and marketing. There's always going to be the threat of new technology. There's always going to be the threat of new entrants into an industry. There's all sorts of existential threats against a company. I mean, it's not easy to keep a company in business. It's a challenge. And maybe I don't know if it's harder to keep a company in business and grow it, or keep a company in business and just, you know, maintain. But regardless, you've got to make an effort for a company, an enterprise to thrive. And, you know, typically we think less about how to incorporate technology to make that business thrive, and more about how to refine our sales and marketing so that at the very least, people have heard of us. I worked in a lot of different industries where people have told me, oh yeah, there's really only 3 competitors to what we do. It's X, Y, and Z. And you know, we like those guys, but we're a little bit better. And so if there's new work, it's going to one of the 4 of us, and you know, we like our chances. If you do a little bit more research, countless times I found not 5, not 10, but maybe 20 or 30 of competitors that, you know, the company didn't know about. And that's not to show that they're not doing their homework. It's going to show that the competitive environment is much bigger. And if you want to get to the point where people are calling you as opposed to you having to pound the pavement, a more sophisticated sales and marketing approach is typically a great way to do that. Now, sure, you can employ technology to have, you know, automated email marketing campaigns and to help make the process more efficient. But again, I mean, we're definitely going to be mindful of trends as to, you know, what technology is doing and how business models are shifting. And, you know, this is kind of why I call myself the most boring guy in private equity. We're going to focus on the fundamentals of satisfying the needs of our customers and thinking about how to be more effective at sales and marketing. Normally, I think it's good to end on a joke, but all of my writers are on strike. So instead of making you laugh, how about I make you watch another one of my videos and make you cry?